And good morning. Out here from Idaho, yeah, the Alpine guy here. And this morning, before it gets hot, which it will here in about 3 more hours, we're gonna pop a couple of these overhead AC vent covers off and remove every other louver out of it and see if that helps the downward flow of air. Now, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just go buy new covers? Well, number one, I'm a cheap guy, and number two, I really don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference or not. If I go buy new covers for $8, $10, $15, whatever they cost, I certainly don't need covers that close off. What I want is covers that are open. The vents are all angled in one direction, but you can turn the vent. But let's be realistic. When you're down here on the floor and you're sitting in the chair, it's kind of hard unless you got a step stool like this, to reach way up there and adjust these vents. What I'm going to do now, I've got the fan running on high, and it's the same thing as if the air conditioning was running, except we're not running the compressor because I don't have enough amperage here at the house to do that. So we'll just run the fan on high, and that'll tell us if this mod is going to do any good or not. What we're going to do right now is we're going to put a little bit of liquid smoke up in the air, and we're going to see down low where you'd be sitting if that air is getting blown around much. So if I was sitting on the recliner, which is where my wife and I sit, and I put a little bit of smoke there, I guess you could say there's a little bit of airflow. Now, I don't have the overhead fan running, which we always do, but so there is a little bit of airflow down low. Down here on the floor, the air is stirring around just a little bit. There are no open windows here in the Alpine, so the smoke is being dispersed by whatever air is coming out of these overhead vents. Now let's put a puff of smoke up towards the vents. And as you can see, that's all blown immediately downward about right there, pretty forcefully. But down lower, where I would be sitting at in my chair, or the wife would be sitting, there's really not very much airflow. So let's take one of these covers off and see what that does. And if you have this style of plastic cover, which most of the Alpines do, some of the new ones, the shape has changed a little, but people want to know, well, how do I get those off? And a lot of people use a screwdriver, but if you take a butter knife like so, and you lay this butter knife up in here like this, where you've got a nice big edge, and gently work downwards while you pull, then you will see that you can break this loose and that the entire thing will come off. And I got to get both hands on this, so you get the general idea. You see that we have one portion of it off, and we'll use a butter knife on the other side and we'll pop this cover off. Okay, so we have the cover removed off, and again, we used a butter knife. You could use a screwdriver, but you run the risk, and I just put 2 fingerprints up there, so I'll have to clean that off. But now let's try a smoke test with the vent completely removed, and let's see what kind of airflow we get down here closer to the floor. Well, here we go, and you can see it's instant. You can see that air is being blown away considerably more, and so that tells me I'm getting more airflow down here, and when I stand underneath of it, I can feel it. And let's spin around the other direction, and let's do one more smoke test. And you can see that smoke is instantly dispersed. So what about over at the 2 recliners? Okay, we're going to put a little smoke right by the recliners. And you can see the difference. That air is moving around. It's getting blown. So if you were sitting in those chairs, to me it's a safe assumption that if I modify these, I'm not going to take all of them out. I'm going to take every other one out, And then we'll put this back up and see if it makes any difference. This is the opposite side. So we'll use this as a before. And you can see that that air is really not getting blown around very much. Okay, so we're just simply using a box cutter knife. And as you can see, we're going to trim out every other one of these vents. We left the first piece in, took the next one out, left that one in, and then we'll work it all the way down. Okay, we've got, looks like every other fin cut out, more or less, and aesthetically, it looks good. The back side we won't see, but that looks nice. And so let's take it out and install it and see if it makes any difference. In case you're wondering how long it took to do this, it took maybe 2 minutes and a couple of sips of coffee with a good sharp box cutter knife and not a lot of pressure either. And in case somebody is curious what the size of the covers are on these round ones, and your Alpine may vary, be different. These are 7-inch round, so that might be useful information if you just wanted to replace them with something different. Okay, so here's the difference in what the two covers look like. This is the OEM one with all the fins in it, and this is the OEM one with every other fin just about removed out. So I'm going to put this one back in place, and we'll do one more smoke test and check the airflow. Okay, so I cleaned the grease spot off that I made up there, put the original cover back on, and let's do a couple of smoke checks. That's up towards the ceiling. You can kind of see how it disperses the smoke, which we would expect. And here's down at about head height near the chairs. And there's directly over the chairs. We'll do that one more time. So that's smoke directly over the chairs. Not getting a lot of disbursement, as you can clearly see. So let's take this cover off and put the one on that I've modified. Okay, there's the modified cover in place. And it looks nice. Doesn't look like it's hacked up or anything. We'll do a view like that. I think that looks pretty good. But does it make any difference at all in how much air blows down towards the floor? Let's find out. So the first test will be up towards the ceiling. And you can see that air is blown away instantly. So let's do about standing head height. There's standing head height. And let's do over by the chairs. And you can see the difference. I certainly can. That air is being dispersed, and that's going to make a difference without a doubt as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, it's a cheap modification. It costs me nothing, and just use a little sharp box cutter knife, and you could probably do all of these if he's in a hurry, maybe in 30 minutes. And I want to do one more check. I turned that overhead louver just a little more so it's pointing more towards the chairs, because that's where we're going to be sitting. And let's try another smoke test directly over the top of the recliners at about head height. And I would say that that air is getting blown around a lot more than it did with the stock cover on it. And you know, if it's only a little bit, it's a little bit. And the nice thing is, it didn't cost me a penny to do it to see if it makes a difference. So here in about 4 weeks, we'll find out when we make another trip to Yellowstone if we get a little more cooling air there. So there you go. That's a cheap, inexpensive modification that you might want to consider doing. to your Alpine if you have the round style ducts, and the newer ones I'm not sure. I know I think they're oval shaped, but you might want to look at those too, and maybe what we did here is something that would work in your application as well. Take care. We'll catch y'all later here from Idaho, the Alpine guy. We're off and clear. I thought I'll get this cover off. I'll stick the phone up in there and turn the light on. And hopefully, if I can figure out how to make the silly thing work. So we're going to stick this up in this hole. You know, it wouldn't be a fair test if I didn't also do the same thing in the bedroom unit. In these vents, we have them both pointed more or less at our heads because, you know, that's where you want the airflow at night. But you get a decent amount of airflow, but it could be more. That's why you see this nice fan that the wife has. She sets this on the table stand or on the dresser across from the bed at night. It's very quiet, and that really moves the air around. But back to the task at hand. Let's pop one of these vents off, and well, let's do a smoke test on this one. And the vent, like I say, is more or less pointed at the right side of the bed. So we'll turn it just a little bit more so it's pointed more or less dead down the middle of the bed. There's a smoke test right up at the top of the vent. And then let's put a little smoke down here about the middle of the bed. And it moves around pretty good. So let's take the vent off and see what it does with no vent on. There's the vent removed, the vent cover I should say. And if you look up in here, you'll notice that you see nice bright shiny HVAC aluminum foil tape around. And that's because several years ago I pulled off these plastic inserts that go in between the outer ceiling and the attic duct area and retaped all inside here. If you haven't done that yet, you really need to, because you'll find that this behind this plastic insert bezel, you'll find that the flimsy HVAC tape that they put on is probably got several tears in it, and half your air, your cold air, is actually going up in the attic instead of coming out. Back to the task at hand. The cover's removed, and let's see what the air looks like up towards the top. And you can see that blows it away immediately, which we would expect. There's towards the middle of the bed, and it's blowing it, I would say, better. But of course, all the air is actually blowing straight down right here, and we want that air more or less directed over in that direction. So let's go modify this vent cover, and we'll come back and make one last test. We're going to the wood shop and one of two of these ducts that I've modified, and you can see where we've cut every other vent out versus what the OEM looks like. So we'll leave the one OEM in and this one like this, and let's get a quick check with a little bit of liquid smoke, see if it appears to make any difference at all. There's a little bit of liquid smoke, and let's do that again. That's down towards the bed. And I don't know about you folks, but I see a hell of a difference, pardon my French, I see a heck of a difference in the air that's blowing towards where our heads would be. So I'm impressed with that. I think the wife is going to like that. And let's go get the other one done. While I'm at it, before we go in and cut the other vent out, let's take a look-see up inside this other overhead vent. Okay, so we got that second cover on, and the first one's on, and then let's put a little air right in the middle of the bed, see if it blows air towards where our heads would be. So there's a little smoke, and what a difference. So we'll do it one more time. So, you know, if you're going to do it anywhere, at least do it in the bedroom, or go buy new ducts, you know, whatever suit your fancy. But we're pretty pleased with that. I think that's going to make a huge difference for us. That really disperses that liquid smoke, and so that tells me the air is blowing right down there at our heads. And let's just put one right up here where our heads would be. And I know some of you have everything perfectly arranged and it looks in show shape condition all the time. You know, my Alpine's 9 years old, give me a break. There's a little smoke right there, and folks, the liquid smoke doesn't lie. It shows you that making these two simple no-cost mods. If you have the round style vents, if you have a different style vent, you may be able to do the same thing, or you know, you may find some vents that you want to go buy and try those instead. I think it would be safe to say that anything's going to be better than the factory OEM. And why it took me 9 years to finally decide to do this, well, I've been thinking about it for 8.5 or 9 years, and finally got around to doing it. And make sure that cover's on good. Yep, it is. And I finally got around to doing it, and I think we're going to like that. So now that's really all from the Alpine guy. Sunday out here, had a nice little breakfast, and then told the wife I was going to go out here and tinker around before it got hot. It's 11 o'clock now, so it's starting to warm up. So we'll go in and put this video together and see if it's worth uploading, and hopefully it is, and hopefully some folks will get some tips. If nothing else, if you haven't looked at those, if you haven't popped off these covers on your overhead vents and looked at and removed the 3 or 4 screws and pulled those inserts out and looked at that original factory taping, I strongly encourage you to do so. Maybe on the new 2022 and 2023, maybe they've changed the duct structure a little bit so that you don't have that issue. But if you've got an Alpine that's 2010 up to 2021, you need to be looking at these if you haven't already. We'll catch y'all later, and that's it. finally. Take care.